Hi, everybody. Rick DiClemente with Astrology Unplugged. Tonight, we'll be talking about predictions, that strange word that used to be a real big deal. And unfortunately, too many people think that's still what astrology is about. I'm going to try to clear some of that up. If my cats don't sabotage me here. All's quiet on the Western Front. Anyhow, I'm going to be showing you some charts, and I'm going to take you through the steps. When you talk about predictions, you're talking about your natal chart being stable in the center, and there are various methods to move the planets around. And these sensitive points in your natal chart, in your birth chart, there are certain points that are very numb, certain parts that are very delicate, certain parts when they get hit, your whole life spins around. And I'm going to tell you again, one of the best ways you can learn astrology is to look through a person's past. Look at their birth chart, go back and ask them to write 3 or 4 dates when great big deal things happened to them in their life, and go back and see where the planets were sitting on what planet. And that's one of the best ways. You've got to do a lot of research. Okay, now, I'm itching to tell a story, so I'm going to go ahead and tell it. Okay? I've been doing a lot, this is off the subject. I've been doing a lot of research for years on murderers. I do it on saints, I do it on baseball players, I do it on everybody. But I've been very fascinated with serial killers because I want to know what makes them tick. And I watch a lot of them. I'm talking over 20 years. And I've come to a very clear conclusion. No, it's not the Scorpios out there killing everybody. It's not the sun sign. Okay, just like Karen can be a Leo, but she can have a lot of Virgo in her, and Elke could be a Cancer, have a lot of Aries in her. We all have lots of amounts of different things that we don't really know because we're over-identified with the sun sign. When I talk about signs, I'm talking about the energy of the sign. Hello, Susan. Suzanne. I have found without a doubt, there are 4 signs that are much more inclined towards killing somebody. And it's not the sun sign. It's somebody with a lot of X, Y, it's somebody with a lot of A, B, C, or D. The other 8 signs, not so much. And I'm talking about hundreds of people I've looked at. So when I say Gemini is number 1, it's number 1. Without a doubt. I'm not talking about sun sign of Gemini, but I really have seen, without a doubt, more stuff in Gemini as opposed to the counterbalance of the other signs. And what I have found, you're not going to believe this, and I don't know why, the four signs, I'm really unable to list 5 through 12. But the first 4 are very clear to me after hundreds of tests. And the first 4 are the 4 mutable signs. Without a doubt. Gemini number 1, Sagittarius number 2, Virgo number 3, Pisces number 4. And I put great emphasis on the Gemini Sag. Now, I'm not saying a sun sign, but I've seen a lot of killers with a lot of planets there. And what happens with those 2 signs especially is anything goes. It doesn't mean your sun sign, but you may have a lot of that energy in your chart. But that's one of the things that happens if you've got a moral character that's teetering on the edge, and you've got a great big part of you that's anything goes. Linda, you tossing your computer up and down? Something's going up and down. Anyhow, and I'm not kidding you. Those are the 4 signs. Gemini, Sag, Virgo, Pisces. The other 8 signs I see all 12 signs, but I don't see them that often. And I'm not talking about the sun sign. Now, it kind of makes sense because the mutable signs are they're less fixed. They have less control of themselves. They get out there in the wind, and the wind blows them around. Anyhow, I'll be researching this much more in due time. Don't write me a letter and say you're a Gemini, you don't kill anybody. And, you know, that's not what I'm trying to say. But there's no doubt about it in my mind. The 4 mutable signs are at the top of the list. Very seldom do I see the Scorpios. Waldo. Very seldom do I see the Leos, the Cancers, the Capricorns. Just don't. Tonight we're going to talk about predictions. Now, in predictions, what I have come to believe is agreeing totally with Richard Tarnas, who wrote Cosmos and Psyche, who says that predictions are accurate if they are archetypal, but not concrete. And we got this thing in our mind of concrete. Yes, you're going to meet a stranger on Friday. Yeah, you're going to get that job. Yeah, you're going to be okay. You're going to sell that house in July. And I lean real far from that type of stuff. I even think it's abuse of astrology. I understand why people do it. But you can't give me the schizophrenic belief in free will and a belief in predestination at the same time. It's got to be one or the other. You can't do that. You can't tell me I got free will, but tell me what's going to happen. Hey, I got free will, but tell me what's going to happen. Doesn't make any sense. So what Tarnas and what the modern astrologers are coming up with post-Jung, post-Carl Jung archetypal astrologers is that we have a real good idea of what type of thing is going to happen to you, what flavor, but that does not mean specific events. For example, a person, I've used this before, I'm going to repeat it anyway. It's a really good analogy. We're sitting here in San Francisco. A client comes to me and says, I want to go to Hawaii tomorrow. And I look at the planets tomorrow, and the winds, like a weather map, the winds are blowing towards Alaska. You're not going to Hawaii tomorrow. Unless some miraculous feat of sailing, okay? The winds are blowing to Alaska, Jan. But the next day, the winds are going to shift, and they're blowing directly to Hawaii. That doesn't mean you're going to Hawaii either. A bad astrologer might tell you that, because what the astrologer needs to do is investigate. That's why when I do my readings, I start out with a lot of questions. And one of the questions I ask is, what happened the last 4 times you took your boat out? Well, 3 of them I knocked my boat over completely, and the 4th time it got smashed. Well, you think you're going to sail to Hawaii tomorrow? I don't think so, because you can't sail a boat. If I talk to another person, oh, last 4 times I took my boat out, I got to exactly where I was going, I had a good time, 1 leg sticking up in the air. That person's going to probably get to Hawaii. So as an astrologer, you have to get a feel for what the person's yachtmanship is like. Some planets hit us, we do fine. Other planets hit us and we go to pieces. Now, one of the main ways to predict is to look at the transits. A transit is a planet today going over planets in your natal chart. There are secondary progressions that are called progressions, where you move each planet 1 day represents a year of life. And there are other methods that I'm not going to get into. But where you got to start at is here. All right. Let me get this on your screen. I'm gonna bring up a screen of where the planets are right now. Okay, you notice I'm showing you a different screen wheel type. I'm showing you a wheel type that shows the signs of the zodiac. I don't usually do this. Okay, you see the houses are these triangles. These are the houses. They're different sizes, but each sign of the zodiac is 30 degrees. This is the zodiac. Okay. Now, it may seem a lot difficult to you, but one of the problems new astrologers have is they're really spoiled by computers. One of the disadvantages we had growing up is we had to do everything by hand, but it taught us a lot because we knew where the planets were in our fingertips. You need to know how fast the planets move. You need to know which planets are a big deal, which ones are dangerous, etc. So here we are in February 2019. The Earth is in the middle. Now let's just go take our time. There's no hurry here. You see Pluto at 21 of Capricorn, almost 22. Pluto came into Capricorn in 08. It's going to leave Capricorn in 024. Pluto's very slow moving. The only thing slower is Eris, and we're not going to get into Eris because she's brand new, and she'll be in the sign of Aries for 120 years. So Pluto moves anywhere from 15 years per sign to 30 years per sign. Most of the planets have a pretty regular orbit, but Pluto's is really wild. It goes way out and it comes real close. Most of the time, Pluto is beyond Neptune, but there are times when Pluto is closer to us than Neptune is, because of its really wild, eccentric orbit. So Pluto is in a sign for 15 years, 16, 17, 18, 19, up to 30. Its shortest stay we just had was in Sagittarius 95 through 08, 95 through 08. And when it gets in the opposite sign in Gemini, it'll be there for 30 years. So you have to have a sense of how fast these planets are moving. Now, the problem with it is that the newspapers and magazines, they sell because of sex and because of relationships. They're always writing about Mercury and Venus and Mars. These are very minor planets. Mars is not, but Mercury and Venus and the Moon are really, really minor. And that's what you always hear them talking about, because they move fast, and that's how they can get a horoscope on you Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, because they're looking at the fast-moving planets. I don't deal with the fast-moving planets very much at all. I am Mars outward. Mars, Jupiter, I don't even work with Jupiter much. Mars, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. The heavyweights. So now, when we go back and we watch, Pluto's at 21. It's gone to about 21. It's gone back to about 18. It sat there at 19. It's moved to 21. It's going to go to 22. It's going to go to 23. And then it's going to stop in April, and it's going to go backward. It goes back and forth. And that's one of the reasons why using an ephemeris is so good. Using a book that shows you the numbers of where these planets will be on what day. You can sit in bed or sit at your desk, and you can look and see where these planets will be, but you can see them all at the same time. So you really should be up to speed on using an ephemeris and using a computer in addition. So we know Pluto's moving 21, 22. It's going to go to 23 and back and forth. So like Elke has a planet right at 22 over here at Cancer. We know that Pluto is going to be very much affecting. Her sun is over here at 22, and Pluto's almost at 22 right now. It's going to go a little bit past and come back and forth like that. So it's going to be affecting her for over a year, 2 years. She's in a Pluto era because her sun is right here. The United States sun is 12 degrees. The United States sun, July the 4th. The United States sun is around here. So a couple years ago, Pluto was opposite the USA sun. That's why the predictions came about. Pluto hitting the sun of the country was an identity crisis because the sun represents your identity. So you need to get up to speed on these planets as to a feel for what they do. We know basically what Pluto does. You need to know basically what do these planets do when they're transiting versus what do these planets do in the natal chart? A Pluto moving by is different than the Pluto that's sitting still in your birth chart. Because remember, your birth chart is nothing more than a map of transits at that exact moment you were born. But yet, a planet in a natal chart acts differently than a planet that's transiting by. Neptune, the spiritual planet. Neptune, it spends about, well, Pluto's about 256 years to go all the way around, 256 years. Neptune's 164. So Neptune is approximately in a sign for about 15 years. Now, what's unusual about Neptune is when it's at 15 degrees now, it's in its home sign of Pisces. But when it came in with Chiron. They were together for most of those years when Neptune had entered Pisces. So they both entered Pisces together. That was about 5-6 years ago. And that's why we got a lot of deception, like the weapons of mass destruction. We got a lot of deception about certain leaders that are leading us astray. And that's why I made that video in 2015 talking about choosing inspiration or choosing delusion. Choosing inspiration or choosing a, what do you call it? A clan? A cult. Occult type thinking. C-U-L-T type thinking, which we're seeing everywhere. So Neptune is very famous for self-delusion. Now, so we know Neptune is not going to go very fast. In the next 7 years, it's going to go from 15 to 30. Then when Neptune goes into Aries, it's going to be a big deal. Because this is the end of the zodiac. This is the beginning. Speaking of Uranus, Uranus has just, well, let me put it this way. Chiron has recently gone to the final degree of Pisces. It's gone into Aries. It's come back into Pisces. It's going to go forward again. But I'm not going to talk much about Chiron yet. Uranus. Uranus is a big deal too. Very much a butt kicker. Uranus is at 29 of Aries. In March of 2018, Uranus went into Taurus, stayed there for a while, came back into Aries. Now it's at 29 plus. It's going to go back into Taurus here soon. Uranus is like clockwork, 7 years per sign, 21 years per sector, 84 years around the circle. Very, very important. The outer 4 planets are the big deal. You got to know how they move, how fast they move, to sense it. I can look at a birth chart and I can automatically see the transits coming up over the next several years because I work with it so much. So Uranus is about 7 years per sign, has a relatively circular orbit, even though it spins on its side. It doesn't spin this way. It doesn't spin this way. It spins this way through space. It rolls through space, which is really kind of wild. All right, the next one, Saturn. Saturn's really important to know. Saturn's about 28 months per sign. Saturn, 28 years around, comes back when you're 28, comes back when you're 58, comes back when you're 84. It will go back and forth. So it moves about 10 degrees in a year. And when it's on you, it can be on you for a couple of years. It all depends. Now, since these planets retrograde, and everybody thinks of Mercury, Mercury only goes 90 days and then it comes backward for 21. Goes forward for 90, comes backward for 21. But you don't think about the others because you don't hear about them. Well, the other planets are much more important. Mercury's chaotic, but the outer planets go forward for 7 months a year. And they go backward for 5. 7 months, 5 months. To be born with 4 or 5 planets retrograde is not unusual. Now, if you're born with Venus and Mars retrograde, that's really rare. Mercury retrograde is very common in charts. All the other outer planets, the inner planets do not retrograde because they're closer to the sun, such as the moon and the sun. So, in a natal chart, Venus rarely retrogrades every couple of years, as does Mars. So if you're born with Venus or Mars retrograde, that's usually very rare, and it takes a very special look at it. Now, we talked about Saturn, 28 years around the circle, or 28 months in one sign. So that's why when you get hit by these planets, they go over you once, or 3 times, or 5 times, or 7 times. Usually a planet goes over you 3 times. It goes over, it stops, comes back, stops, goes forward again. Depending on how it hits you, it can be up to 5. It can, in extreme situations, be 7 times. So it's a whole era. Okay? Now you have to know how they move before you get an idea of what you can predict. Now, a couple more things. Jupiter is like clockwork. Jupiter 1 year, 1 year, 1 year, 1 year, 1 year, 1 year. It retrogrades for a while. It'll go over you and backward. It's right now in the sign of Pisces and Sagittarius. It's in its home sign right now. Jupiter rules Sagittarius. It'll return here every 12 years. Every 12 years. It does bring you a lot of opportunity, opens doors for you, etc. Finally, Mars is something you really need to keep an eye on more than anything, because Mars is the trigger. Mars is every 2 years, every 2 years, every 2 years. Mars is about 2 degrees every 3 days. So it moves pretty fast. And that's why I tell my students to get a magic marker and write, well, always know where Mars is on their forehead. And they never listen, and they never do. And I ask them, where's Mars? And they say, I don't know. I said, well, once it kicks you in the butt and the behind a few times, you'll start to watch Mars. You got to know where Mars is. Mars is very dangerous because it has no conscience and it wants action. Well, if it's hitting something that's in trouble, if it's hitting something under stress and Mars comes along, the combination can be kind of wild. Okay, now let's go forward. All right. I'm going to bring up Karen's chart. We were talking about it a few weeks ago. We were getting down to really important stuff, and her connection broke off. I'm going to use the chart mainly for teaching purposes. Okay, here's Karen D's chart. Let me bring the chart up on the screen. It's not the format that I usually use, but you can see in Karen's chart, she has a Sun and Pluto in Leo. She has Mars rising. She has the sign of Cancer rising. And these planets in gray are planets that I'm still watching, I'm still learning about, so I don't make them black like the other ones are. I purposely put them as gray because I'm learning and I'm still assigning values to them. So this planet of Chiron I'll be learning about. I've only studied it for about 15 years. Eris only about 4 or 5 years. These are your regular planets. And if you take a look at her chart, Jupiter's sitting out here all by itself. Here's your planets. There's Jupiter. This is a bucket pattern. And when you have a bucket pattern, it's very frequent that you have a bucket handle. And there's your handle, Jupiter. And the reason I was starting to talk with her about this a few weeks ago, in her lifetime, Pluto started here. Remember, it's 256 years to go around. In her lifetime, Pluto's gone from here to here. Because the whole time it's gone back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Now, when it went over her Neptune, we could ask her and see what happened. We see all kind of events. When it went over her Mercury, when it went over her Venus, we see all kind of events. And for instance, when Pluto, the passionate planet, went over her Venus, the planet of relationships, I can guarantee you there are a lot of things going on with marriage, divorce, getting involved, getting uninvolved, etc. That's what happens when the big planets hit the personal planets, such as Venus and Mars. Well, now Pluto's right here, and it's going to get to 23 degrees. It's going to get to 23 degrees on April 24th. 23.5 degrees. It's going to get almost on that planet and stop and then retrograde for about 5 months. Then it'll come back, and about 6 months later, it'll go over that Jupiter. And when it goes over that Jupiter is when Karen will be ready for Pluto to hit her Jupiter. All right. I've been doing this 40 years. It's just recently that I got through my thick head that these planets are not coming over you and hitting you. Yes, we talk that way. Hello, Linda Jordan. Sneaking up on me, eh? One hand behind my back. I'll fight you with one hand behind my back. Anyhow, when a planet goes over a planet, you have to first of all know, what does the natal planet mean? Okay, so let's go back to the natal chart. I'm going to take all the time I want, even if it takes 3 weeks, because I want you to understand this. We got a transit going over a natal planet. Remember, this is just one way the planets move. There are other ways to move the outer planets. By transit means where is it on a given day compared to the natal. Okay. Transit versus transit, which means 2 planets in the sky, means the whole world's going through it now. If Pluto is traveling opposite Saturn, pretty soon Pluto is going to be traveling together with Saturn in Capricorn for the whole planet. That's going to be no picnic. That's transit versus transit. I'm going to look at transit versus natal, which is mostly where you get predictions from. A lot of predictions come to us, like global predictions come to us, from transit versus transit. Okay? Such as you'll hear people say, oh, Uranus is entering Taurus now for all of us. The sun is going into Aries every first day of spring. Neptune is coming home to the sign of Pisces. What happened when Neptune hit Pisces? The day Neptune with water and liquids, the day Neptune hit Pisces was Fukushima. On that day. That's transit versus transit. That's just a transit going through the zodiac. Not compared to Japan's chart, our chart, your chart. That was just Neptune, water, floods, tsunamis. That was just how dangerous one planet could be just coming into the sign, which is why you see that diagram behind me of a diamond on our book. Because that diamond on the exquisite zodiac represents how distinctly one sign is different than that sign. Like a diamond cut. Capricorn is that different than Sagittarius. There is no cusp. That's BS from the newspapers. The reason you think there's a cusp is because newspapers, well, I'm born on June 20th. I don't know, some papers say I'm a Gemini, some say I'm a Taurus. I was born on the cusp. Well, that's correctly said. But when you were born, we know exactly the year you were born. We know exactly what minute that sun changed from one sign to the next. And that's right on that edge of that diamond cut. So if you're 2959, you're a Taurus, and you're 3000, you're a Gemini. So that's why people think they're born on the cusp. Now the cusp do work between houses. So if there's a planet sitting between your third and your fourth house, which is determined by your birth time, that planet is affecting both houses. Houses are different than signs. If you have a planet between the seventh and the eighth house, we're close by, it will affect both houses. We're not talking about houses. Okay, talking about signs. Now, if we got to start questionnaire, and then we're going to serve Karen because we wanted to pick up on this anyway. What's going to happen when the mother of all mothers, Pluto, hits her main planet? Why is it her main planet? It's not the ruler of Leo. She's a Leo. Leo's ruled by the sun. It's not the ruler of her chart because she has Cancer rising. The planet that rules your chart. Let me explain this to you. Okay. Being a Leo, all Leos that ever were are always ruled by the sun. Now, every 12th Leo, 8.5% of them, have Cancer rising or Gemini rising or Taurus rising because this whole thing spins. So the planet that rules the sign that is rising is the planet that rules her chart, the moon. Since she has Cancer rising, anybody in the world that has Cancer rising, and it rises 2 hours every day, wherever their moon is, and their moon could be anywhere in the 12 signs, wherever their moon is the ruler of the chart. This is her natural ruler. This is the ruler of the chart. So naturally, anything that hits that moon by opposition, by right angle, anything that hits that moon is going to cause great activity in her life because it's the ruler of your chart. It's just like, say you were in captivity and you're the leader of your troop, say you're a captive, and the leader of your troop is called in for questioning. Well, you're going to sit there nervously because your ruler is out there being questioned, and anything that happens to him or her is going to really affect you because it's a ruler. Now, here's a third thing. Okay, the chart ruler is the moon because it rules Cancer. If Gemini were rising, the rising sign is this line right here. This is actually the horizon when you were born. So when she was born, you could see Jupiter setting. The planets go this way. They rise and they culminate and then they set. Jupiter was setting in the west. The moon was rising. All the other planets were not seen because they were below their horizon at 2:45 in the morning. But when you have a bucket pattern and you have a handle, this planet becomes the main planet in the chart. I don't care if you call it the natural ruler. I don't care if you call it the ruler of the chart. I don't care what you call it. It's the handle of the bucket. In other words, the moon's still a big deal. The sun is still a big deal, but Jupiter is a real big deal because it's the handle on this whole bucket. Now, in her life, Pluto has been coming in the last several years since I've known her. I've known her for about 12 years or so. More like 14. Since I've known her, Pluto's been in this area. Okay, what does she do during that time? It says relationships. What does she do when Pluto gets over that? She gets involved with a very heavy relationship, and just a year or two ago, her partner passed away. So that's very symbolic with Pluto hitting the 7th house of relationships. Now, what I've talked about lately, this 7th house is seen so much in astrology because it parallels the 7th sign, Libra. It's known as the house of marriage, the house of partnerships. And it's true. Marcia just got married. Planets happen in the 7th house. You get divorced, you get married, you go to counseling together, whatever. But I have found without a doubt, because I don't take anybody what they say. I listen to what the authors say, and especially if it's Waldo, because if Waldo tells me something, I know it's right. So I don't have to check nothing if Waldo tells me, so I'm okay. No, I was just seeing if he's awake. The 7th house is very real about relationships, but I'm going to tell you something. We are very ego-centered people. And to us, relationships are a big deal. And for 40 years of being an astrologer, that's almost everybody, that's what they want to hear. Is there somebody out there? Is there somebody out there? Is there somebody out there? Yeah, somebody out there looking in your window, yeah. But we're so hung up on this thing of soulmate. And I can't claim if there is a soulmate or not. That's Stephen Poplin's area. But I can tell you that has changed. In the last 8 years, people don't ask so much anymore about, is there a partner out there? Is there somebody out there for me? What that's been replaced with is now people want to know, number one, what is my purpose? What is my life's direction? So I think it's very healthy. And I still think it's very good to look for a partner, but I really like the idea that in general, people are looking to their own direction to fill them as opposed to another person. So I think blending the two and balancing the two is where it's at. What I'm getting at is what I've learned about the 7th house in the last several years is the 7th house is your public persona. It is the role you're going to play in the public, especially as a counselor. Almost everybody I know, when a planet goes into their 7th house, they either put up a new shingle, they take their shingle down, they quit this club, they join that club, they go learn about counseling, they quit taking a course about counseling. I've talked to you a lot, Jan, about yours with your heavy-duty Saturn sitting there, and we see that's going through lots of change. That's because you, as a counselor, are changing. And over these years, as the planets go through your 7th house, you will take upon the energies that are represented by the transiting planet. Because when a planet comes through the 7th house, it's not a stranger out there. It's not some visitor from Uranus. It's a part of you that's ready to surface. I don't know what got into me, but I've had enough of this. I'm up to here with this. I don't know what got into her. I do. Look in her chart. Astrologers don't say that. We don't say, I don't know what got into him. We do know. What we don't know is how they're going to react to it. So what's been happening since I have known Karen? Karen, I have spent 6 days with her once in Florida. She's a remarkable healer on so many levels. She has magic hands, and she really understands what she's doing. She was able to work on parts of my body that were so painful, but when she would work on them, there was no pain whatsoever. None. But the pain would be released. I'd go to other therapists, massage people. Marcia, I know you is one too. Other massage people have hit spots on me, and I go, ow! That didn't happen with Karen. Karen went to the spot and knew how to alleviate it anywhere from my brain to my toes, but without grinding away at it anyhow. The point is this. She's been telling me, you see, you have to understand, first of all, how we met. There was a man in Pittsburgh once who wanted to get together about 14 years ago. He wanted to get together a specialty group. He was a Gemini. He wanted to get 4 different types of healers to work together on a national basis. I was to be the astrologer. She was to be the healer. And these two other fellows out in California were going to be part of the group too. And the group fell apart. That's how I met her, and we continued on. But as Pluto has gotten closer to that Jupiter, what does Jupiter rule? Jupiter rules things such as publishing books. Okay? You got to remember, Jupiter, Sag, Gemini, Mercury, Jupiter. Mercury is local newspapers, local columns here in the community. Jupiter's big novels, war and peace across the world. Okay, so what has she done in the last 2 years as Pluto's approached? Her partner passed away, and as he did, she was in the process of writing, and as Pluto's gotten very close, she's finished her book on all about her healing, but it's not there yet. It's not on Jupiter yet. And what I've learned, to my dismay, I've learned to get off of Karen's back. Well, when are you going to hang the shingle? Well, when are you going to do it? When are you going to go put a storefront? When are you going to start healing? Because all I heard for years and years, I'm getting there, I got this form, and when I get this done, and when I get this done, and when I get an if and then, and and I know now that I was wrong to be pushing her. I was doing it nicely. But I know she won't be ready till Pluto hits. When Pluto hits, it's symbolic that her energies are lined up. And when that Jupiter, you see, watch this. This is really a good lesson in predictions. All right. Okay, one of the problems with Jupiter and Capricorn is the following. Remember, Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, its best place. And that means that the opposite is its worst place. So the worst place in the zodiac for Jupiter is in Capricorn. Okay? So she naturally has a problem with Jupiter and Capricorn, even though her Jupiter is so strong. Why is that? I don't care if she's a Leo, she got a bunch of Virgo, she's got her techniques down, she has a Leo confidence. Her Jupiter's in Capricorn. And what that means is I'm going wait. What did I tell you about Jupiter all these months? Jupiter is the planet. I don't know any sophisticated words to use with it. I use the words, a van pulls up out front of your house with your friends and the door's open and they say, woo, get in, let's go. And where your Jupiter is how you'll answer them. My Jupiter's in Aries. Woo, I'm in that truck, let's go. 3 miles later, I figure out where we're going. I don't even know. If your Jupiter's in Pisces, you get in and you get faith in everybody because they called you. It's going to be good. Your Jupiter's in Leo, it's going to be good because I'm here. Okay. Your Jupiter in Capricorn, well, I'm not sure I can go. Let me check my schedule. I got to go. I got something on the oven. I got to make sure I got to be back by 4 o'clock. We'll be back by 4 o'clock. And so your Jupiter in Capricorn is dragging its feet. And that's what I've gotten from Karen for years of when are you going to open up your shop for healing people. She's not ready till she's ready. Because what does Capricorn do? Capricorn is about making sure. And there ain't no way you're going to get in that bus with a making sure mentality. Who in the hell wants you to join the gang when you got this making sure mentality? That's the first thing that goes out the window. It's not F-U-N. It's not fun. But you can't blame her. It's not a fault thing. Her Jupiter is there because of her past life. So obviously, without even looking, somewhere in her 12th harmonic, which is the past life, she has suffered in the past because she was too impetuous. She acted too quickly. She reacted too quickly. And that's why in this lifetime, she put Jupiter in a cautious place. And I'm sure she has guilt about not going forward. And hopefully that guilt is dying now, going away, because there's really no place for it. It's not a guilty thing. She just was not ready. And in fact, when she does open up her store or become a counselor, she's going to be better for it because she will be ripe. So when Jupiter finally hits the Pluto, you will get more of the Jupiter flavor, regardless of the fact that it's in Capricorn. That'll become secondary. You're going to get the Sagittarian flavor. I'm sorry. I'm messing you up. Pluto's coming. Pluto's coming to hit Jupiter. So you're going to get the Plutonic. You think Pluto's careful? Hell no. And even though the Pluto is coming through the sign of Capricorn, hitting that Jupiter, which is timid in the sign of Capricorn, when Pluto lines up with Jupiter, it's going to bring you that confidence. You're going to be ready. The power of Pluto is coming from you. Now, what's going to happen to her is very clear. She's either going to own that Pluto coming through and become powerful, or she's going to get a lot of people trying to bring her down, stop her. And most likely she'll get both, because Pluto's testing her courage. So Pluto's testing her courage, and she keeps going back to the Virgo and the Leo and trying to test herself. Are my notes straight? All these things I'm studying, are they straight? Or am I correct? And all, they don't care. Pluto doesn't care. Pluto is coming to you because the world is hurting and it needs you to help. That's what it's going to do. And you're going to be ready. And if you want the date, I'll give you the date, because it will be exact. Now, you may have all kind of things happen all around it, but to give you the exact date, it'll be close. It'll hit you 3 times. Pluto, Jupiter, February 22nd of 2020, July 2nd, 2020, December 27th, 2020. So we're looking for a year from now, okay? We're looking at a year from now. Now, so now we're going to get to the heart of things. When Pluto gets there in 2020, look what's happening. Pluto's going to be on the Jupiter, and Saturn will have just passed it. You're going to get Pluto and Saturn at the same time on Jupiter. It's there because it's there because it's there, and it's very heavy duty, and it's right, and you have every reason to believe that if you cast yourself and you spread your wings, that you're going to really fly far. Now, you could talk all you want about Pluto. Pluto's many, many sides, but the main word about Pluto is courage. And you're going to feel, as it's getting closer, the courage in you getting stronger. And when it gets closer, you're going to really be strong. So there comes the prediction part of it. What am I going to predict for February 2020? I don't know. I'm pretty darn sure that she's going to surpass her caution, and she's going to go far. And I'm really certain that somebody older is going to come into your life. It could be a relationship. It could be just professional. It could be both. But Saturn will bring you somebody older. Pluto might even bring you an institution that's going to come and back you up. Because the world is changing and people are looking away from their doctors now. And the doctors are really great for certain things. But other things, they're not good. And you could tell they're in there guessing. And people really don't want a bunch of guessing going on. Well, give me that scalpel. Let's see. Well, let's see. And she has knowledge. So, did you want to say, you can unmute yourself if you want to say?
I think it was 2 weeks ago, I had a huge breakthrough that I didn't know that I had because, we don't know we have an issue until we get to the other side of the issue.
That's right.
And I realized that I had been, and it was a self-preservation thing when I was growing up, but that I was bound by fear.
Okay.
And I got rid of it.
Good. And that was Pluto early on. Even though Pluto's 5 degrees away, you're still there.
Well, I knew
That was definitely Pluto energy that caused you, that gave you the ability to transcend. They're wonderful.
Yep. And as you're talking about this, because when you talk about the courage, well, fear, I mean, I'm not going to tell you that it doesn't crop up in some areas, but I recognize it and I can deal with it.
That's wonderful. That's perfect story. And that's why when I hear these stories, Jan, when I hear these stories, I have every reason to have my needle go towards success when Pluto finally hits. It's not because the planet that's hitting is going to be a success or the planet that's hitting is going to be a failure. It's the planet that's hitting is going to bring this type of thing, and she's already showing symptoms of handling it. So if I go back to my boat analogy in San Francisco, and I talk to the person and I'm querying them, how well do you row your boat? Well, we find out the person has a history of sinking that boat all the time. But in the meantime, that person's been studying and learning more maneuvers and learning when to bring the sail down. And they're learning tricks. They're getting sharper, and they're not cowering from it. See? So when I hear those kinds of things, I know. I got a woman now I've been working with for years, and she's gotten out of a bad marriage. And I've told you all so much about cleaning up the basement. Literally. The number one thing. Well, she's sending me pictures. This room's spick and span. This room's clean. This room's clean. And I'm just going, yay. And she's still not with it completely, but things are getting better. They're getting better. They're getting better. So when you see a transit coming by, the computer can tell me when the planets are going to line up. And I'll tell you right now, you're going to get different themes. You're going to get a different theme when Saturn hits that Jupiter, and then when Pluto hits it. Well, when Saturn hits it, Saturn and Jupiter are really at odds with each other. You're going to be hit very strongly with the responsibility of it. What are the laws? Sign this contract. Stay within these boundaries, and you're going to meet them. And you're going to have Pluto with it. And you're going to get Saturn, you're going to get Pluto, and you're going to get Pluto-Saturn all at the same time. So I'll be here to help you with it, but I'm sure you'll do fine. I'm sure you will, because you're all the early signs.
The other thing I have been told that and it's something I've been saying for, I don't know, the last 2 or 3 years, and that I'm to write a book on energy that lay people can understand, because they don't understand. And it's real funny how I'm either getting people or people are sending me stuff about energy, and things that lay people need to understand.
Well, what does Jupiter and Capricorn do? What you have to understand, we could look in your third harmonic to see what the book would be about, but the book's going to be about Pluto hitting Jupiter, which is in Capricorn. The Jupiter is in Capricorn, which means I've been running my life by moving forward and expanding in a cautious, certain way.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a Leonine way of moving. It's not a Virgo way of moving. Remember, your chart's all Leo Virgo.
Mm-hmm.
It's been Jupiter Capricorn, which means I'm going to get in the van with you guys, one thing at a time. You're going to have to wait. I'm bringing my bags. Okay, once Pluto hits it, you're going to be getting past that and going with your passion. That's what Pluto's about. So let's look at other areas since tonight's discussion is about transits. Okay, I'm not going to bore you with how progressions work. That's for another evening. So let's go back in time. Let's go way back in time. Just to show you. You see Pluto's moving quickly. We're back at 1966. She's very young. Look at Pluto at 17. Okay, look at Uranus first. Here's Pluto, Uranus. Remember, they came together in 1965. So this is 1967. So we see around 1967, she's 18 years of age, and take and mix the two together. She's got Venus in Virgo, which is not an electric place for relationships. Venus in Virgo people are, does he meet this part of my checklist? Is he okay here? Is he clean here? Is his car clean? You know, you're real picky about things with your relationships. Well, when Uranus comes and hits it, all of a sudden you ain't picky anymore. So I guarantee you sometime in 67, which is the summer of love, I guarantee you sometime in 67, she threw caution to the wind. Because Uranus, she's holding her mouth. Look at that. See? She thought it was her. Okay, Uranus came by. Let me get this unmuted. She can't even sit in her chair. I mean, what's wrong with this button? Why can't it do this? Huh. There. Let me do it. There. Okay, tell us what happened in 67.
Well, I graduated from high school in 67. Now, an important component to that is Gainesville was my hometown, and Gainesville's the home of the University of Florida. And my senior year in high school and my freshman year of college, at our church, we had a college chorale, but I was dating two guys in the chorale who didn't know I was dating each other. I mean, they had no clue. And if you wanted a date with me, you had to get it 2 to 3 weeks out. I mean, I really dated a lot, and they were.
You came alive and you tried things.
I did.
That's what Uranus does. That's not what Venus and Virgo does. But one of the things you had to look at that time is the contrast between Venus being comfortable in Virgo. Please fill out this form in triplicate. To Uranus, which is, woo, let's try it.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic story.
And I had one guy that actually, he lived in Miami, and from Gainesville to Miami is like a 6.5 hour drive. And he came back at least once a month that summer to spend the weekend.
Well, let me tell you something about that while I get my next chart ready. All right. When Uranus hits your Venus, I could tell you ahead of time Uranus is going to hit your Venus. I have a artist in Pittsburgh that I just think is fabulous. And I offered him a free reading because he's so damn good. And he's so versatile. He just does all these things. I saw Uranus coming to his Venus, and he's so good that I wanted to do his chart for my own edification. And he gave me the birth details, and I saw tremendous stability in this guy's chart. And I offered him a reading because I saw Uranus going into Taurus in May of 18.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't want one. He's a very nice guy. He prefers to go with his own inner clock, which is preferable to me. And I watched him. And since then, his art has just become wilder and crazier. He's trying this and he's trying that. So when the channels are open, the transit's working properly, the predictions can become clearer because you're going to try these things. Now, if he'd been really rigid or taught by a real rigid Rembrandt type of person or somebody that was just to paint what you see, then he would have trouble if he's not letting these new explorative energies through. So I could tell him it's, bend or break during that time. So I've been watching him since, and it's typical now that it's 7, 8 months later. His artwork is settling down. He's still explorative, but since he's opened these doors, he knows what he wants. When my son was little, and he was 14, 15, 13, he wanted to play dad's guitar. Mom's a classical pianist. He wanted to try cello. Mom and dad are astrologers. We see Uranus is on his sun. So we heard him upstairs, bing, bang, boom, bang, ding, dang, wrong. He's just trying everything he can do, rubber bands, boxes, all kind of stuff. And we knew that that's what he needed to do, was explore. That's what you do to let Uranus through. Once Uranus had passed by, he calmed down. He knew he wanted classical guitar. And now he's tremendous at it. Another example. I'll show you how transits work backward. I'm very good friends with Joe Unitas. Joe is a cousin of Johnny Unitas, who was one of America's greatest quarterbacks, who's passed away. Joe and I have worked together 25, 30 years because he does lighting in Pittsburgh, movie lighting, and I was a filmmaker for years. And matter of fact, he and I worked on a movie that Marcia was in. He was when you did the movie in Wheeling, he was doing the lighting. Joe is a Virgo. And Virgos like things the way they like things. They got a reason for every little thing. Well, one day I wrote an article about this about 15 years ago, 14 years ago. One day I was watching the movie he did all the lighting for called Night of the Living Dead. He did all the lighting for it. Well, I worked with him after that in different kinds of movies, assisted with the lighting. Well, I was watching Night of the Living Dead, and do you know how in scary movies, the bed scene is all black, but you can see the actor's face? It's contrived. It's shadowy, but you can see the part of the person's eyes. It's controlled. It's contrived. And I noticed when I watched Night of the Living Dead that wasn't so. I said, what the hell did he do? He'd have the face cut in half. He'd have the main actor in the shade and some other actor in the light. It was just radically crazy. And I knew right away it was Uranus. Watching the movie, I knew it. So I wrote an article called Night of the Jagged Edge. Because Uranus is crazy. Why? Not so wild. So, hi, Linda. Nice to see your kitty. She's got a tuxedo cat, too. Okay, so I take his chart, and I was right. And let's stop this and show you. Where's his Venus? His Venus is in Virgo. His Venus is in Virgo. Venus is in Virgo. You follow the rules. Damn it, you put the shade right there and the slash right there, and you put the Y right here, and you got everything exactly perfect. But he did the entire opposite. So what's going to move this person to do so? So I go back to 1967 or so. I can't remember, 67, 68. Let's go back to 1967. Look. Let's get it here. Uranus is on his Venus. Uranus is on his Venus. It's been coming, because remember, Uranus is 7 years per sign. So it's been in Virgo for about 4 years. So after it goes over his sun, he's trying new things. That's the creative source. It's going over his mind. That's changing. By the time it hit Venus, he did Night of the Living Dead. And that's why you see, go watch the movie and you'll see these. He told me, and I used to be his assistant. I know what it's like. I'd go get him a flag, which is a device to create a shadow. And I'd get something like here to do that, to create shadows. He told me he was picking up people with jackets, putting bricks in the way, putting a cat in the way. He was just making shadows out of anything. He was in the moment of lighting in a chaotic manner, which is what Uranus does. Now, after those years went by, and that's the reason the film's so good, it's the lighting. It sure ain't the acting, and it ain't the script. It's the lighting. This really harsh, scary lighting that's like reality. So I wrote an article, and it's still out there, called Night of the Jagged Edge or something like that. But that shows you how I saw Uranus coming. I worked backwards. I retrofitted it because I knew he did the lighting then, and I knew his Venus is in Virgo. There's no way Venus in Virgo would allow that type of lighting. I don't care what your director says. So when you see a planet coming to a spot, the planet is going to do its thing with that spot. Now, for example, my father was 1 degree Capricorn. And back in the late 90s, I saw Uranus coming in through late Sagittarius. Uranus is going to enter Capricorn. Well, my dad didn't know how to deal with Uranus. He was very Capricorn from the old country. He had his coffee at 5 o'clock. He had his shower at 6 o'clock. He did his shopping on Wednesdays. Everything was very rigid. And my wife and I at the time, we knew it was going to be trouble. And Uranus is the one planet that hits exactly. And on the day it entered Capricorn, he had a stroke. Within a couple of days, he had seizures. And I won't continue the story. Now, I did not predict he would come to life and start dancing. I also didn't predict that he was going to start cracking. But knowing his past, he was not one who was very attuned to allowing Uranus through. Coming from the old country, Uranian people were selfish. Uranian people were unpredictable. Uranian people were too self-oriented. He wasn't going to go and start arguing with the priest about the rules of the church like his son does. I'm born with the sun opposite Uranus. So that's why mine's so strong. But we knew it was coming. There's nothing we could do. We knew it was his karma and he had to deal with it. He didn't live much longer. That's exactly what happened to your man, Elliot. Your man, Elliot, was a Taurus. We knew Uranus was coming into Taurus in May of 18. Some people can't deal with the energy coming through because it's literally like somebody inside you turns on a knob that you can't control. You cannot control Uranus. You can't control Pluto. You can't control any of them. But Uranus is the really wild, crazy, electric type of energy, you know? And when it hits people, what do they say? They either say, it was marvelous, or it was total chaos. It was marvelous, exciting, or chaos. Now look what's happening in the US of A. Eris is becoming known. Look at these women in Congress with their white coats on, their white outfits. Eris is rising. And all these erudite types of professors are going to tell you it's because of this and this. BS. It's Eris. That's what's doing it. It's the Eris inside of us because we are ready for Eris. As you know, Suzanne and I talk a lot about this, being the ruler of Libra, or at least a co-ruler of Libra. We don't know enough yet, but we're watching her. We're learning. We know she doesn't like unfairness. She doesn't like people getting to a position that they didn't earn. She knows she's going to speak up. It's a happening. I don't know if you guys saw this today, but I saw it. I was going through Facebook. There was a 5-minute video of AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, having her 5 minutes with Congress. Now, I don't know if this was done with Photoshop It probably was fake, because I found out later it was on Reddit, and then it had been pulled from the internet. But she was literally playing a game with Congress, saying, play with me. This is showing you how Eris is working. Well, what if we had a president that was doing this? And what if we had the farmer that was feeding this kind of money? And what if we had special interest groups and kind of stuff? And what if we had a Congress that wasn't doing anything? And she was flattening these people. But I literally don't know if she did it. And the fact that you don't see it everywhere, it probably was made up. But it's been pulled from the internet. But the point is, you're seeing Eris explode. Now, Eris has been around for at least several billion years. She's only been known to us for 15 years. But now she's in the consciousness. Now we're ready for her. You go out and you try to suppress a woman's group now. Go ahead and try it. Go try it. Even stuff you could do 2 years ago. Stuff you could do a year ago. You're not going to get away with now. So a transit is a moving body that goes over a stationary body. Now, some parts of you will do well with one transit. Some parts you do well with others. We saw with Karen, Uranus went over her Venus. And I guarantee you, up until the time Uranus there, as far as relationships were going, she was more Virgo and she wasn't comfortable with them. And she wondered about how they would make her feel. And she was kind of touchy-feely about it. And then when Uranus hit her, it opened her up. So just like you saw with my dad, the Uranus went over him and he couldn't open up. Because all of his life he had pushed Uranus down. He had blocked the channel. The stroke wasn't caused because some energy came and caused the stroke. The stroke happened because there were too many blockages there. So when Pluto goes, I can see when Pluto's going to go over a point, like I see with Karen. I can see when Neptune's going to go over a point back and forth. When I'm reading for somebody, I'll go to these charts, and the computer will tell me Neptune is coming. Neptune is going to oppose something. So a lot of people, a lot of Virgo energy, a lot of Virgo people have loosened up. And I wrote an article calling Virgo women are really doing so well. What happened there? Well, my number one visitors are always Virgo women, because I believe they want to stay in sync with God's energy. In the last 7 years, Neptune has been going opposite Virgo. Neptune's been going through Pisces and has been hitting all the Virgo energy. And all of these Virgo people, to different degrees, are feeling like loosening up. This is the one sign of the zodiac that has to have a permission slip. You give them permission, they go do it. They won't do it until you do it. And I don't have any power. I can give anybody permission, but they get it from inside because they're very pure. So you're finding a lot of the Virgo women now are starting to become less picky, less perfectionistic, less worried about every glass being clean in its place and the plates. They're becoming more in tune with the Neptune part. So when I talk to all of you, you've all got all these planets working. Now, all of you have special spots that are poignant because the reason your natal chart is specialized, it's a reaction against the past life chart. Now, just the other day, I had a long talk with Stephen Poplin, who's going to be back on our show on March 7th. Stephen has been here twice. He is the marvelous hypnotist, regressionist who just gave Elke another session yesterday. He really is the real deal. And he's coming on to do astrology. He's a really fine astrologer. And I'm going to kind of dance around the edges a little bit here and there. But he's going to be coming in to talk to us about what's going on in the United States chart astrologically. So that should be very interesting on March 7th. Now, the reason I bring him up is because you see, people are getting more interested now. It's becoming more palatable. It's not just a story. We're starting to understand past lives. We're starting to understand other dimensions. This is why Eris came to us later, relatively later. Eris could not have come to us in the 50s. We weren't ready for it. In the 20th century, what did we get? We got Pluto in 1930. We got Chiron in 1977. In the 21st century, we got 82 new planets. So we're changing. We're becoming more able to take on. And what you're seeing, and you've got to be very stoic about it, I guess, in a sense, or tough, you're seeing a lot of people are going over the edge. You're seeing people that you know going over the edge, and there's nothing you can do about it. You can tell them you love them. You can hold their hand, but you cannot stop the fact that they're not ready for their evolution. Ready for their evolution. And what you can do is keep working on yours and helping. And in the scheme of things, that's why I brought up his name, Stephen, because Stephen understands when things seem to happen, like my dad's stroke, etc. We seem to think it's a bummer, but it's Stephen's perspective dealing with the soul at that level. It's a whole different story. A whole different story. And I don't claim to know anything about the soul, so I'll leave that to him. But what I'm saying to you is when things kind of happen that are bad around us, so we classify that, we don't know. When Elliot left you, we don't know what would have happened to Elliot if he had stayed 2 more years. It could have been much worse. We don't know where he went, what he was doing. We have to trust God and his wisdom of what the soul was doing. This leads me to my final point. I'm going to change subjects for a second here. So, 2 final points. One is some people can really do predictions. Most people are guessing. There are solar arcs which really work. A solar arc is you're born with Saturn 10 degrees from your sun, and at age 10 they run into each other. You just subtract the number of degrees between 2 planets, and they run into each other. And the event that happens will be Saturnian and Sun-like. You just combine the natures of the planets. So that way you can predict dates and the types of events that are coming too. But the big thing, and another thing I want to mention before I shift, is the Hindu astrologers. The Vedic astrologers are unbelievably awesome. It's a completely different type of astrology. It is not Western at all. They have a different looking chart, and I don't know, these are the ones that, they're so big that people build apartments next to their house for their family astrologer to live in. And he tells you who your daughter's going to marry before she meets him. The Vedic astrologers have an unbelievable accuracy when it comes to prediction. I don't know anything about it. I recuse myself. So that's what I know. When I deal with you, I see the kind of planet that's coming. I'm listening to you. Most of you, or you wouldn't be here, most of you are open to all these energies. Most of you are, like I tell people, I don't read the future, I read the present. Ask Jan, I work with her very closely. I work with her present. What's going on now, or maybe the last week, or the next couple of weeks. But I work with redefining what's happening in the present. Because when these planets are going over us, we don't now know always how to classify them. Because we're used to using human terms, and astrological terms are quite different. Now, the final thing I want to bring up, and I want to bring this, we'll talk more about transits later, if you wish, through the ensuing weeks. The one thing I want to bring up is this, and I want to talk about this when Stephen is on the show. I have been doing a lot of work, as you know, with past lives and what I call the past life spiritual transcript, which is the 12th harmonic chart, and it seems to show what your history has been as far as leaving God and trying to get back to God. Because in my opinion, that's all we ever do. We keep tricking ourselves that we're really separate, and we're trying to get convinced and go back to where we belong. But the problem is most of us feel like we don't deserve it, that the damn door is closed, the pearly gates are shut, and most of us behave because we got to behave the right way to get in that door. And I don't know what happened, but I got an idea that Jupiter just went over my Mercury. Jupiter just went over my Mercury in Sag, because all of a sudden in the past couple of weeks, I realized that the pearly gates, there aren't any gates there at all. There aren't any gates. Going to hell. There's no hell. This is the hell. There aren't any rules. Haven't you met people that are so wonderful and they're so charismatic and they're so attuned? I guess they had good childhoods, but they got more than that. They're just so attuned and everything's smooth, and when you're with them, everything just feels right. It's a wonderful feeling. We're becoming more like that. And when you look at people messed up next to you, relatives, friends, yourself, whatever, what are you looking at? You're looking at all the crap that they put in their head about all these rules. They had to act this way. Most of us, they had to act this way or that way to get past mom and dad because they had their stuff, right? And that's what's happening now. And if there's anything in my 67 years that I'm devoted to now, it's that. I'm devoted to announcing, in my opinion, that there aren't any rules. That you by your own self, just like you see a little kid. Kids are fine. There are exceptions. They were really fine. We're going to really do good, loving things if we just let ourselves be. What do you think? Anybody got an opinion? Got 2 minutes left. Anybody got an opinion on that? Yeah, Miss, we need to change your name here. Miss Platt?
He said, the kids are all right. I spend all my time with them. They're fine. They're just different. They're not like us. But
yeah, but what are they like essentially once you get to them?
They're wonderful. I mean, they're just, on the same journey. A lot of them, there are individuals with their individual pieces, but as a large group, they're more tolerant, less racist, less, I wouldn't say they're less concerned about money, because I think that because of their peculiar situations, that's not the case. But, I always feel very comfortable thinking that they're going to be up to the challenge. We just don't know quite how they'll do it, because they're all welded. They've got this.
well, they're Pluto and Scorpios, and if you didn't know, Linda is, beside an English professor, she's a basketball coach.
Yeah, I got here a little late because we had study hall tonight, and 2 hours with a bunch of rowdy boys, and
But that's what you're going to start seeing with Ocasio and the rest of them. You're going to start seeing, hey, by God, we should really live according to what that damn thing says on the side of that Statue of Liberty. We're really supposed to let people in and be nice, huh? Oh, let's get the walls up. Let's get the walls. You're seeing these two forces clash. You're seeing these two forces clash as Saturn and Pluto are approaching each other. It ain't going to be pretty. Your next 5-6 years ain't going to be pretty, but you're going to see in which group do you want to be with, because the ones who are connected have a much better chance of surviving all the transits versus the ones that want to put the brakes on and close down and block people and go back to the 40s and 50s. Look at the people in the 50s. They didn't have personalities. I mean, they were kind of good buds. And, hey, good pal, how are you? But they didn't have really strong awarenesses of what was beyond them. They were very worldly people. We've changed very quickly. So anyhow, that's tonight's show. Any questions about transits? I specialize in transits. I hope I can help you with them. Any questions? Yeah, Suzanne, then I'll get to Marcia. Go ahead, Suzanne.
Okay. This is how I understand it. The outer planets always have more power when they're transiting over personal planets.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm trying to ask.
Let me interrupt you. If transiting Venus were going over your natal Pluto, it's hardly a blip.
Okay, got it. Okay, now, okay, the outer planets, do they always win out?
No, nothing wins out. What happens is
Stronger.
Well, for example, with Karen, when 2020 comes in February, Pluto's going to start sending its Pluto juices through her channels. It's a matter of how well she has prepared. You see, how much fighting does it have to do? For instance, when I had open heart surgery, that was an indication that something was trying to get through to me and it was blocked. So God had to stop my damn heart and take care of it himself. But what you're listening for is as it approaches, is the personality doing the things? Is the personality clearing the way for it? Because you can all feel these things coming.
Yeah. One more question. One more question.
We're not going to hurry.
When the outer planets transit over the most powerful planets in your natal chart, is that like explosion happening?
Well, it can be very explosive, but once again, you got to look at the planets involved. Like if Pluto's hitting Uranus, it's explosion hitting explosion. If it's Neptune hitting the moon, it's very subtle because both planets are subtle. You have to look at the nature of both planets. But what's important is the planet that's coming. How well what is your history of dealing with that type of energy?
Okay.
So if you're a very rigid follower of the rules all the time, and you were taught that way, and your history's that way, when Uranus comes by, you're probably going to have a lot of cracks, okay? Because you're not used to being open. However, if you're loosey-goosey and your mom and dad treated you like do all the art you want to do, paint on the walls, and Uranus comes by, it's not a big deal at all. So you have to mix it all together. We're going to go to Karen, and then we'll finish with Elke.
I just want to real quickly say something to Suzanne. It also depends on the nature of the aspects that it's making. It's not just when the planet hits exactly, when it's conjunct. It also, shifts happen when they aspect it, squares, oppositions, and stuff too.
Well,
and
there are a lot of books written about whether it's square or 6 degrees or 30 degrees and 80 degrees, and I have found that to be very misleading. It is much more like Arroyo says. The fact that the two planets are combining. Now, when a conjunction happens, it can be just as raucous as an opposition happening. So what matters is the combination of those energies. And I think they mislead a lot of students when they put too much emphasis on the aspects. But the aspects are still important, and you need to be aware of them. Yeah, we'll finish up with Karen. Go ahead.
Oh, I thought there was somebody else that had a question. This has helped me.
Oh, Marcia, okay.
I just want you to know that I'm starting to get a handle on transits. Tonight has been, it wouldn't have mattered if it was me or somebody else. What I'm understanding is it's like, for lack of a better word, it's like there's a river that opens up because the dam starts crumbling away and
exactly.
It can finally and so the two mix.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. Very good way of looking at it. There you go. You get it. You get it. Marcia Bud?
What is it about the planets and the energy when they move backwards?
Well, that's a very hard question and a very good question. It seems, after a lot of study, that when a planet moves backward, they're really different than Mercury retrograde. It seems like, for instance, Saturn is coming and it stops and retrogrades. It seems like Saturn's coming. I'm going to fix this thing. Ooh, Saturn's coming. I don't like the way things are. Things aren't really locked down. I'm going to really work on this. I'm going to work on this. I got plans. I want to make plans. Saturn stops and retrograde. Well, those are really good ideas, but I think I'm going to go read a couple of books. I'm not going to work on it just yet. I'm going to put it on the back burner for a little while. Then it stops to come forward again. Then you start picking it up and, okay, here we go. And then when it comes forward again, you will have benefited because you deemed it positive to relax and relent for a little while. Such as Mars. Mars will come, you're dealing with your teenage kid. Mars is coming at you and you're, I'm going to kick his butt. And Mars stops and retrogrades for a while. Well, let's talk about this a little bit here. Let's try some other techniques here. Then Mars stops and comes back forward, and you end up having quite the face-off. So that seems to be the case with Mars retrograde or planets retrograding.
The planets then are actually physically moving backwards.
No, they're not physically. They just look like it. Like when you pass a car, it looks like that car is going backward.
Right.
That's all. That's all retrograde is. If you draw a line from yourself to the planet to the stars beyond, it looks like that planet is moving backward through the zodiac. It looks like it, but it's not. Of course, they're always moving forward. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And all I can say to you is the only person in the world that knows that Joe Unitas had Uranus on his Venus when he did the lighting for the night of November. And I figured it out backward. So that's the kind of stuff you can do when you're very Uranian. See you next week. This will be on YouTube tomorrow. See y'all. Thank you, YouTubers. Good night.